The airport was alive with a symphony of sounds, rolling suitcases clattering across shiny floors, the sharp beeps of ticket scanners, and the soft murmur of countless conversations in dozens of languages. Smith Joul had never felt anything like this before. He stood at the glass wall of Terminal 7, watching the planes lined up like silver giants ready to devour the sky. He felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. Today wasn't just a flight, it was the beginning of a story he would tell for the rest of his life. Asterisk. Smith's fingers tightened around his boarding pass. The small rectangle of paper felt heavier than it looked, as if it contained not just information about a flight, but a gateway to an entirely new world. He looked around at the passengers bustling past him, families juggling children and luggage, business travelers typing rapidly on laptops, and elderly couples holding hands, their eyes reflecting both fear and thrill. Smith imagined each of them carried a story, but today, his story was about to collide with theirs in a way he could never have imagined. Asterisk. The line to board moved forward. Every step brought a new level of anticipation. The smell of jet fuel from outside mingled with the subtle aroma of coffee from the nearby cafe. Smith found himself savoring it, almost as if inhaling adventure itself. His mind wandered to the plane that awaited him, sleek, silver, and humming with life, like a mechanical dragon ready to soar. He had watched countless takeoffs from afar, always imagining what it felt like to be inside, to feel the earth fall away beneath him as the engines roared to life. Now that fantasy was becoming reality. Asterisk. Finally, it was his turn. He handed his boarding pass to the gate attendant, a young woman with sharp eyes and a faint smile. She scanned the ticket and said, "Have a safe flight, Mr. Joul." Her voice was polite, but there was a hint of curiosity, as if she sensed that this wasn't going to be just another routine flight for him. Smith smiled back, trying to hide the sudden shiver of anticipation that ran down his spine. He walked down the jet bridge, each step echoing against the metallic walls. The world outside seemed to disappear as the tunnel transported him directly into the belly of the airplane. Asterisk. The moment he entered the cabin, Smith felt his breath catch. He paused for a second, taking it all in. The interior was bathed in soft, ambient lights, highlighting the rows of seats that stretched endlessly in front of him. Each seat had its own screen, displaying a welcome message that promised entertainment, information, and distraction for the hours ahead. The hum of the air conditioning blended with the gentle murmur of passengers settling in, creating a strange sense of calm before the storm. Smith walked down the aisle, searching for his seat, feeling oddly like an explorer entering a new, uncharted territory. Asterisk. When he finally sank into his seat by the window, the world outside seemed suddenly alive. The city below shimmered like a blanket of tiny stars, roads winding through clusters of lights, cars flickering like fireflies moving in unison. Smith pressed his forehead against the cool glass, mesmerized by the sight. His heart raced, a strange cocktail of adrenaline and awe flooding his veins. He had never felt so small and so powerful at the same time. The world was vast. Yet he was about to claim a small space in it. Suspended in the sky. Asterisk. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Smith noticed the other passengers. A little girl with pigtails clutched her mother's hand, wide-eyed at the engine roar. A businessman adjusted his tie for the 10th time, muttering under his breath. An elderly man sat quietly, eyes closed, possibly remembering flights from decades ago. Everyone was wrapped in their own little universe, yet all of them were about to share a single, extraordinary experience. Smith felt a pang of connection, though strangers. They were united by the invisible force of flight. Asterisk. The engines grew louder, vibrating through the floor, and Smith felt the plane lurch slightly as it prepared for takeoff. He gripped the armrest, not out of fear, but in awe. The hum became a roar, The runway blurred beneath him, and suddenly, the plane surged forward with a power he had never imagined. The city lights fell away, the ground disappeared, and the sensation of weightlessness hit him as they lifted into the night sky. Smith's stomach twisted and soared simultaneously, and he laughed aloud, a sound of pure exhilaration escaping his lips. Looking out the window. The world transformed into a vast ocean of darkness dotted with lights like distant galaxies. Smith felt as if he had been transported not just across miles, but into a different dimension. He didn't just fly, he drifted, floating between the known and the unknown. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "This is only the beginning. Hold on tight." And Smith knew, with every fiber of his being, that nothing would ever feel ordinary again. Hours passed, and Smith Joul had settled into the rhythm of the flight. The hum of the engines was a constant, almost hypnotic lullaby, and passengers around him were slowly drifting into their routines, reading, watching movies, or dozing off. Smith tried to distract himself with the in-flight entertainment, scrolling through options that promised adventure, romance, and mystery. Yet, despite the bright screens and cheerful announcements, a strange unease had begun to creep into the cabin. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. The cabin lights flickered once, then twice, and Smith noticed a faint vibration under his feet. He shifted in his seat, trying to convince himself it was nothing, just the plane adjusting, turbulence, normal flight stuff. But then he felt it again, more pronounced this time, a low, rhythmic hum that seemed to vibrate through the very air around him. The other passengers didn't notice, or at least they didn't react, but Smith's senses were on high alert. Something felt different. He pressed his forehead against the cool window, peering into the dark expanse outside. The stars glittered like diamonds, but then, in the distance, he saw a shadow moving, an irregular, cloud-like shape that didn't match the normal patterns of the night sky. It wasn't lightning, it wasn't a storm, yet it hovered there, motionless, almost deliberate. Smith's pulse quickened. "Turbulence doesn't look like that," he whispered to himself. No, his voice sounded too loud in the quiet cabin. A soft murmur began to ripple through the rows as the plane tilted slightly. A gentle sway that wasn't alarming, but enough to catch everyone's attention. Flight attendants calmly moved down the aisles, offering drinks and reassurance, their smiles professional, practiced. But to Smith, the calm seemed unnatural. It was like they were trying to mask something. Like they knew something he didn't. His curiosity burned brighter than ever. An insistent voice inside him urging him to watch, to notice, to remember. The vibration under his feet grew stronger, and the overhead signs flickered for a moment. Passengers shifted in their seats, some reaching for the seatbelt sign, others rubbing their eyes. Smith gripped the armrest, trying to steady himself as the plane made a slight dip. Then, without warning, the cabin lights dimmed slightly, as if the plane itself were holding its breath. A chill ran down Smith's spine, a sensation he couldn't shake even as he tugged his jacket closer around him. From the window. The strange shadow seemed to grow larger, closer, almost tangible. It pulsed faintly, a dark, swirling mass against the star-speckled sky. Smith's mind raced. Was it a cloud formation? A reflection? Or something else entirely? His instincts screamed that this was no ordinary flight phenomenon. He leaned forward slightly, heart hammering, trying to catch a better look, and that's when he noticed a subtle glow emanating from within the shadow. The glow wasn't bright, more of a faint, almost ethereal shimmer, but it was enough to make Smith's breath catch. His stomach knotted with a mix of fear and exhilaration. He realized he wasn't alone in noticing it. A few passengers nearby had begun pressing their faces against the windows as well, whispering nervously. The atmosphere inside the plane had changed. The casual comfort of a long-haul flight was gone. In its place was something electric, charged, a quiet tension that prickled at the back of the neck. Smith thought about asking the flight attendant, but he didn't. He didn't want to break the spell. Didn't want anyone to laugh off his instincts. Instead, he let his eyes remain fixed on the anomaly outside, absorbing every detail. It hovered, silent and deliberate, moving in ways that defied conventional explanation. He could feel it, an almost magnetic pull, like the plane and the shadow were aware of each other, performing a silent dance in the night sky. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Smith's mind alternated between rational thought and wild speculation. Could it be some experimental aircraft? Military? No, the shape was wrong, too fluid, too deliberate. And why now, in the middle of a standard flight route? His curiosity turned to unease. He wondered if anyone else on the plane had noticed the pattern, the subtle movements, the way the shadow seemed to anticipate the plane's shifts. Then. A low hum, different from the engine's steady drone, filled the cabin. Subtle at first, almost like a vibration in the bones, but steadily growing in intensity. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, some clutching armrests, others exchanging worried glances. Smith pressed his hands against his knees, trying to ground himself. Whatever this was, he knew it was something he had never experienced before. The ordinary world, the mundane safety of airport procedures, takeoff routines, and flight attendant smiles felt far away now. This was something entirely different. Smith realized, with a mix of awe and dread, that this flight was no longer ordinary. Something was coming. Something alive. Something that would change the story of this night forever. Smith Joul felt his pulse quicken as the strange vibration grew stronger. The shadow outside the window no longer seemed distant, it had shifted closer, hovering with a deliberate grace that defied logic. The faint glow that had teased him before now pulsed rhythmically, almost like it had a heartbeat. He pressed his forehead to the glass again, eyes wide, as the plane seemed to respond to the presence of whatever was out there. The world inside the cabin felt suspended in time, the ordinary hum of flight replaced by a tension that could be cut with a knife. The autopilot light on the control panel flickered. A subtle alarm chimed, soft but unmistakable. Smith saw the plane's digital display flash briefly, warning of a minor system adjustment. Flight attendants exchanged worried glances but remained calm, moving down the aisles with their usual practiced ease. Passengers, sensing the shift in atmosphere, whispered nervously, some clutching their armrests, others staring wide-eyed at the windows. Smith realized that whatever this was, it had transformed the flight into something extraordinary, something no one aboard had ever experienced before. Then it happened. A beam of soft, silvery light cut through the night sky, illuminating the cabin faintly. Smith froze, his breath caught in his throat. Outside the window, the shadow had taken shape, a sleek, almost metallic craft with contours that glimmered under the glow of its own light. It hovered effortlessly, moving in a way no ordinary aircraft could. Its surface shimmered, reflecting the stars, the city lights far below, and even the interior of the plane itself. The sense of awe was almost unbearable. Passengers gasped. A little girl whimpered, clutching her mother's arm. The businessman beside Smith leaned forward, jaw tense, eyes wide with disbelief. Even the flight attendants seemed momentarily shaken, though they maintained their composure. Smith's mind raced, a whirlwind of questions and fears. What was it? Where did it come from? And why had it chosen this plane, this exact moment, to make its presence known? The plane slowed slightly, a subtle dip that sent a shiver through Smith's spine. The craft outside mirrored the movement, almost as if it were studying them, analyzing their trajectory. The silvery light pulsed again, stronger this time, bathing the cabin in an ethereal glow. Smith felt an almost magnetic pull toward the window, as if he could reach out and touch the unknown, though a part of him screamed to look away. He didn't. Curiosity had become a force he could not resist. Suddenly, the hum of the plane's engine seemed to synchronize with the glow outside, creating a sound that vibrated through Smith's chest. It wasn't mechanical, it was something else entirely. The entire plane felt alive, suspended between reality and something that defied explanation. Passengers held their breath, their collective tension filling the cabin like an electric current. Smith noticed beads of sweat forming on his forehead, his hands gripping the armrest tightly, knuckles white. He had never felt such a combination of fear and wonder. The mysterious craft moved closer, and Smith caught a glimpse of something inside a shadowy figure, almost humanoid, yet unlike anything he had ever imagined. Its movements were precise, deliberate, and strangely graceful. Smith's mind raced to comprehend it, but comprehension seemed impossible. Words like alien and UFO flashed unbidden in his thoughts, but even they felt inadequate to describe the reality unfolding before him. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the craft halted and hovered silently, almost patiently, alongside the plane. The lights dimmed slightly, and for a moment, the entire cabin seemed to hold its collective breath. Smith felt an inexplicable connection, a sense that the presence outside was aware of him, aware of everyone aboard. It wasn't hostile, at least, not in any way he could sense, but it carried an undeniable power, an intelligence that both terrified and captivated him. Minutes or maybe seconds passed. Smith couldn't tell. The world outside the window and inside the cabin existed in a fragile suspension, every sound amplified, every movement deliberate. Then, a sudden shift in the hum and light signaled the craft's departure. It moved slowly at first, then accelerated, disappearing into the night sky as quietly as it had arrived. The glow faded, the shadow dissolved, and the autopilot system blinked back to life as if nothing had happened. The cabin erupted in murmurs. Passengers exchanged bewildered looks, some laughing nervously, others whispering prayers of disbelief. Smith leaned back in his seat, heart pounding, mind spinning with questions that had no answers. What had just occurred? Was it real, or had he imagined it all? And yet, the evidence was undeniable. The pulse of energy he felt, the sight of the craft, the synchronized hum of the engines. Something extraordinary had brushed against his ordinary world. As the plane continued on its route, Smith pressed his hand to the window, staring into the dark expanse that had once held the craft. He realized with a mix of awe and unease that nothing about this flight or perhaps his life would ever be the same again. The ordinary world, the predictable, safe reality of airports and takeoffs, had shifted into something far more extraordinary, and he was at the very center of it. The moment the mysterious craft disappeared into the vast darkness, the cabin seemed to exhale collectively, a quiet sigh echoing through the rows of passengers. The autopilot had returned to normal, the hum of the engine steady, and the ordinary lights of the plane glowed once again. Yet, the sense of normalcy felt fragile, almost unreal. Smith Joul remained pressed against the window, staring into the night sky, his mind struggling to reconcile what he had just witnessed. The stars twinkled serenely as if nothing unusual had occurred, but Smith knew better. Something extraordinary had brushed against his life, and he would never be the same. Around him. Passengers were slowly settling back into their routines, some exchanging nervous laughs, others whispering in disbelief. The little girl in pigtails clutched her mother's hand tightly, eyes wide as though she had glimpsed a secret meant only for her. The businessman beside Smith exhaled heavily, running a hand through his hair, muttering something about flight safety protocols, but even he seemed haunted by what had just transpired. The cabin crew resumed their duties, offering drinks and reassurances. But even their calm professionalism could not fully mask the tension lingering in the air. Smith leaned back in his seat, still processing the encounter. He could feel the adrenaline slowly ebbing, replaced by a mixture of awe, curiosity, and unease. Every fiber of his being was alert, replaying every detail of the craft outside the plane, the smooth, metallic surface, the rhythmic pulsing glow, the almost humanoid figure inside. He had stared into its presence and felt an uncanny sense of awareness emanating from it, a silent acknowledgement that this flight, this precise moment, was somehow significant. It was as if the universe had whispered a secret, and only he had caught it. As the plane continued on its path, Smith's thoughts drifted to the countless what-ifs racing through his mind. What had it been? A military experiment? A visitor from another world? Or something far beyond human understanding? Rational thought struggled to find answers, yet even in the absence of explanation, a profound sense of wonder settled over him. He realized that life would never feel ordinary again. The memory of this flight, the lights, the vibrations, the silent gaze of the craft was now etched into his mind, impossible to forget. Hours passed in a surreal haze. Smith tried to focus on the small details of the flight, the way the moonlight reflected off the cabin walls, the soft murmur of passengers returning to sleep, the rhythmic hum of the engines, but his mind kept returning to the encounter. He glanced around, noticing the quiet fascination on other passengers' faces. Though few would admit it, he sensed that everyone aboard had shared a fleeting, unspoken acknowledgement that something inexplicable had occurred. They had all glimpsed the extraordinary, if only for a brief moment. The captain's voice broke the quiet reverie, calm and reassuring. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened and your tray tables are secured." The words were ordinary, but Smith felt their weight differently now. The descent toward reality, the world of airports, traffic, and city streets seemed almost trivial compared to the cosmic encounter he had just experienced. Yet, even as the plane prepared to land, he knew the extraordinary had left a permanent imprint on his consciousness. As the landing gear extended and the plane glided toward the runway, Smith stared out the window, watching the lights of the city below grow larger and more distinct. He felt a profound gratitude for the ordinary the streets, the cars, the familiar geometry of human civilization, but it was tempered by a lingering curiosity. The night sky had revealed a glimpse of something beyond, something that made him feel simultaneously infinitesimal and incredibly significant. He realized that ordinary life would continue, but the memory of this flight would remain a bridge to the extraordinary, a reminder that the world was far vaster and stranger than he had ever imagined. The wheels touched the runway with a gentle thud, a grounding sensation after hours of suspended tension. Passengers exhaled, some applauding lightly, others murmuring in relief. Smith remained quiet, his mind replaying every detail of the encounter. The glow, the shadow, the hum, and a sense of awe washed over him. He knew that what had happened was rare, fleeting, and possibly unique. And yet it was real. Real enough to change the way he would perceive the world forever. As the plane taxied to the gate and the engines powered down, Smith Joul gathered his belongings slowly, reluctant to let go of the cabin that had become a portal to something unimaginable. He walked down the aisle, passing passengers who were exchanging quiet conversations, sharing their disbelief and wonder. He stepped onto the jet bridge and into the terminal, the ordinary world embracing him once more. Yet inside, he carried a secret spark, a silent understanding that life held mysteries that defied explanation. Waiting for those willing to notice, Smith stepped out of the terminal into the cool night air, looking up at the stars once more. The city below hummed with life, unaware of what had happened above it. And as he walked toward the exit, he whispered to himself, a mix of awe and anticipation in his voice, "This is only the beginning, and I'll never forget tonight."